when you boil it away, reading is about escapism. Fiction, at least, is about escapism and putting you in an adventure that you could never. Maybe it's just because you wouldn't have the money to, or you were born in the wrong time or place, or maybe it's literally physically impossible. But I want my boys to feel like they can be anywhere and do anything, and by extrapolation, all of the other people that will hopefully read it.
Now. No, I love the glasses.
All right.
Okay, so Nick, who are you and what is your background?
My name is Nick Nethery. I'm a historian by degree, although I never really did that professionally. I was in the Army for just over 20 years. I was a bomb technician for almost all of that time. So I did everything from field work, dealing with unexploded ordnance, to developing curriculum and training partner nation soldiers. So good career, a lot of fun.
And what do you like to read?
I like to read pretty much anything. I tend towards science fiction and fantasy if I'm just wandering a bookstore, but I'll read. I grew up with grandparents that had a shelf of Louis L'Amour, and Larry McMurtry and westerns. So I'll read those. I like old potboiler detective stories. I am, the history nerd in me still loves that, so I'll read nonfiction history once in a while. Pretty much anything. But if I have something to read just for leisure, I'll probably snag a SF or fantasy.
And what kind of a reader are you? What do you look for in a book?
I like standalone books quite a bit. I like series, but what I really like is standalone novels by writers that traditionally do series books, like Neil Asher. When he usually writes like 9-book series, so when he does a standalone, it's interesting to me. Or like Roger Zelazny or David Gemmell, if they would do like a standalone book, that's interesting to me because it's their version of a bottle episode. That's the way I think about it. So I like to see that once in a while. I don't have a really preference on print or digital, except that it's more convenient for travel to have your Kindle. But yeah, I don't really have a preference.
And how did you get into writing?
I always wanted to be a songwriter. I wanted to be a musician, and I was also writing stories, just fiction stories, amateurish science fiction and fantasy stuff, imitating what I was reading from David Weber or Orson Scott Card or the people that I really liked at the time. As a mid to older teenager, and then I got into the Army after 9/11, and I just never really got back into doing it, full time as a hobby or professionally. But it was always an interest of mine. So I wrote here and there for my own, amusement, and never tried to sell anything until the last few years. But I felt like I got distracted from it a little bit by 9/11, and then as I've come back to it, a few years ago, I realized I think it wasn't really a diversion. It was giving me ammo. I think taking that crazily long detour.
And why did you want to write this particular upcoming novel?
The idea of explosive remnants of war obviously is a thing that interests me professionally. I wrote my master's thesis on landmines. The idea of a weapon that can hurt or kill or ruin someone's day, years, decades, maybe hundreds of years after a conflict. We still find Civil War ordnance once in a while, That intrigues me. That you can fire a weapon now, and in 150 years it might kill someone. after the war's over, whom you've never met, in a country that might not exist yet. That's fascinating to me. It's always been. And so I thought about that concept, but at scales across millennia, and what would happen if we figured out that this ball of dirt where we are is or was in the past a battlefield or an outpost or a FOB, a forward operating base, from a past, intergalactic or interstellar conflict. I found that really interesting. And so I thought, what would modern bomb technicians do? How would we handle it if we found unexploded ordnance from the distant past that wasn't produced by maybe these humans that we're familiar with here, or maybe they weren't produced by humans at all? Where are they from? How do we deal with them if they don't even obey what we think of as the laws of physics or thermodynamics? How do you deal with that? So it opens up a lot of interesting questions, physically and chemically and scientifically, but also just how do you deal with it on a personal level, and what would that unit look like, and what would their policies be? And I don't get into budgetary issues or anything like that, but it's the application and the field work and the planning that really appealed to me. So it's a story about a special unit that deals with these pieces of ordnance that they don't know. You don't know at first where exactly they came from, but we've never seen them before.
And what do you want your book to give your readers?
The reason I got into science fiction and fantasy is that it made me feel like I could do anything. Even as an 11 or 12-year-old kid, I realized I probably wasn't going to ever get to pilot my personal spaceship to Alpha Centauri to a trading post and back, or anything like that. But I enjoyed, when I read David Weber as a kid, in the base library in Kleberkasern in Germany where my dad was stationed, I felt like I could be a space marine or a space commando. I felt like I could be a battleship captain with Orson Scott Card's books. I felt like I could be Ender Wiggin or Bean, and I wanted, particularly my sons, to have that feeling that anything is possible. It sounds so cliched and stereotyped and like it's a Saturday morning PSA, but really, when you boil it away, reading is about escapism. Fiction, at least, is about escapism and putting you in an adventure that you could never. Maybe it's just because you wouldn't have the money to, or you were born in the wrong time or place, or maybe it's literally physically impossible. But I want my boys to feel like they can be anywhere and do anything, and by extrapolation, all of the other people that will hopefully read it.
Thank you.
Anything else? Blue, favorite color?
All good.
Okay. 40 regular?
Yep.
Anything else?
No.
Okay. That was good.